Hello, welcome to European Open Briefing for Tuesday, October 16th. I'm Rafael John, currency analyst at XM.com, and we're going to be having a look at what's happening in the currency markets today. So we're seeing a bit of a recovery in risk sentiment this morning. We can see it was somewhat mixed in Asia. Chinese indices ended the day in negative territory, but most other major indices did manage to close higher. We're also seeing a positive start in Europe as well. In Wall Street yesterday, though, shares there did give up some of the strong gains we saw last Friday. So it's still unclear whether or not equities market has escaped that sell-off. The dollar, though, is moving higher this morning. Yesterday it came under pressure both against the yen and the Swiss franc. Both, of course, are safe haven currencies. The franc and the yen are slightly weaker this morning. So we did see yesterday those tensions between the West and Saudi Arabia over this disappearance of a Saudi journalist in in Saudi Arabia's consulate in Turkey. So there were reports that the journalist was murdered by Saudi authorities, and that. So we saw the US and the UK, France, Germany strongly criticizing Saudi Arabia and seeking answers, and that did led to a bit of a spike in oil prices yesterday, though we're seeing oil prices now giving up most of those gains this morning. We can see WTI crude down by around 0.6%. We're also seeing dollar yen moving higher this morning as we're seeing that improvement in risk appetite. Dollar yen recovering back about the 112 level, up by 0.3% at the moment. The dollar index is more or less flat around the 95 level. The euro is slightly higher. It's at 1.1591. Focus remains on the Italian budget. The Italian cabinet yesterday approved the budget and submitted it to the European Commission. So by the end of the month, the European Commission will let the Italian government know whether or not they have approved or rejected the budget. So that will remain in focus for the euro for the coming weeks. Sterling is also up this morning. It's currently trading at 1.3184. It did get a bit of a lift heading into the European session on comments by the German foreign minister saying that the talks are going well. So despite the fact that over the weekend there was another impasse over the Northern Ireland border issue, the two sides are working hard to resolve those remaining differences. So we did see sterling yesterday falling sharply at the start of trading on Monday before bouncing higher. We also heard statements from the British Prime Minister Theresa May, who said that the two sides remain committed on reaching an agreement. If you look at the Australian dollar, it did come under pressure earlier in Asian trading following the release of Chinese inflation numbers, which showed producer prices or factory gate prices easing for the third straight months, possibly an indication of weakening demand in China. The Aussie, though, is now doing a little bit better, still down on day though at 0.7124. The kiwi did get a bit of a lift from New Zealand inflation numbers, which came in above expectations. The kiwi currently up by 0.3% at 0.6570. The loonie yesterday got quite a boost from the Bank of Canada's quarterly survey, which reinforced expectations of a rate hike by the Bank of Canada next week. The loonie is extending those gains at 1.2982 at the moment against the US dollar. And if you look at gold prices, they're holding close to yesterday's 2.5 months highs, around 1,233. And we can see oil prices, the biggest loser this morning, giving up some of yesterday's big gains. As the yen retreats, we're seeing euro yen being the best performer, followed by dollar yen. And speaking of dollar yen, we can see that rebound off from those 1 month lows yesterday of 111.61. The dollar did come under pressure yesterday from worse than expected retail sales numbers out of the US for September, but the weaker yen is helping the greenback move higher. Though if we do see another sell-off on Wall Street later today, we could potentially see the dollar heading back down again. So the main thing to watch as far as the dollar is concerned is the U.S. Treasury Department will publish its semi-annual report on the exchange rate policies. Although we know that they're unlikely to label China as a currency manipulator, it could potentially still be pointing the finger at China, as well as potentially adding more countries to its watch list. Let's now move on to the New Zealand dollar, because it did rise significantly from that stronger than expected inflation headline figure of 1.9% in the third quarter year on year. That was about forecast of 1.7% and up from 1.5% in the second quarter. However, we did see the kiwi easing back a little bit later on. It did touch a 2-week high of 0.6595 earlier, but then the core inflation figure was unchanged at 1.7%. So that does still leave some risk of a possible rate cut by the RBNZ. So we're seeing the kiwi easing off a little bit at around 0.6570 at the moment. We're also going to have the bi-weekly dairy auction later on, which could potentially also move the New Zealand dollar. And finally, looking at the Canadian dollar, we can see that big spike down for USD CAD, big spike up for the Canadian dollar following the Bank of Canada's quarterly business survey, which showed business confidence was at near record levels. During the quarter, we saw the loonie spiking to 1.2950 to the US dollar. And the report also signaled stronger growth in the coming quarters. The Bank of Canada is due to announce its latest policy decision next Wednesday, where a rate hike is expected. And finally, looking at what's coming up later in the day, focus will be on UK job numbers, German's use survey, and US industrial production. That's it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.